Oh, hey. It's been 21,340,800 seconds since my last upload. We should probably do something today. With Corona shutting down so many jewelry shops, I wanted a material that didn't need any upkeep. That's when I remembered how cool old pennies can look due to the way that copper oxidizes. It's pretty easy to see that there's a lot of different ways to patina copper, so what if we used this to our advantage and made it a core design element in a ring? Science lesson aside, it's been 8 months, so how about we just get right into the action, yeah? Before we do anything, the first thing we need to do is get our carbide drill set up so we can bore out the center of the material. Every material has an ideal feed and RPM, which is how fast you spin the material and how fast you push the drill through it. Depending on how hard the material is, this can be really tricky to learn. But luckily for us, copper is super soft, so you can just punch through it however you want. Now that the center is punched out, we can get in there with our carbide cutter to adjust the ring's width and size the inner diameter to match my patron's finger. Now that the inner diameter is the size we want, we need to mount this on our expanding mandrel and shave down the outer diameter and get it to a reasonable thickness. The first cut, also known as the facing cut, is always the most satisfying, unless you mess it up like I do. By facing the material, we're making it flush with itself, so it's nice and flat. To give the ring a more unique shape, I'm just tapping it with the side of my carbide cutter just to give it that nice chamfer on the edges. I know what you're thinking. Don't worry about the fact that it's uneven. We're gonna sand that all out in a minute anyway. But first, I think it's time to show you guys a tool I've never used on this channel before. The wheels on this knurling tool are going to let us etch a really cool pattern into the surface of this ring. Usually people use this tool to add grip to things, but I just love the way that it looks. The only drawback is that it's super rough on the material, but it's nothing we can't sand out easily. Because metal's such a hard material, we're sanding it with 400 grit all the way to 1500 grit to ensure that it's as shiny and smooth as possible before we anodize it. Typically they say not to polish copper before you add a patina, but I figured I wanted to try and see what would happen. As promised, now we're deburring it and just making sure that the ring is nice, even, and has no sharp edges. Next up, we gotta get all the oil and dirt off of this thing so it patinas properly. Preferably, I would have been wearing gloves here to avoid adding more oils back from my hand onto the piece. So rather than leaving it in a bucket of water for 100 years, we're just going to create a homemade fume chamber using salt and ammonia in order to get it to oxidize overnight. There's a ton of different ways to patina copper, but I found that I really like ammonia and sea salt the most. I made the mistake of trying to distribute the salt super evenly here, which is not ideal because you're probably going to have to do this process at least a handful of times. It probably took me at least a week to get it to where I wanted it. Every single time I didn't like what I got, I took it out, sanded it, and then did this all over again. Everyone always goes for the blue look, but I wanted to do something different for this one. Let me know in the comments if you liked it more as a blue ring. I didn't want the inside to be super rusty, so I took it out, sanded it, and then put it back in for a few more hours. I decided to leave some surface scratches on it because I figured that the rust could possibly catch on to them and give it a nice, unique look. I also decided to add some polish to block it from rusting just a little too much. It's so easy to take the rust off that you could do it with your fingernail, so I decided to add a couple of coats of lacquer to keep it nice and protected. The whole point of the ring is to have it look like it's from the bottom of the ocean, so I opted to use a glossy finish so that it looks like it's always wet. After spraying on 2 coats, the ring was fine.